In the past, I was the most inconsistent person I knew. Like, till the age of 23, I had not read a single book from start to finish. I just used to read a couple of pages, and when I was really in the mood, and then I just left them halfway. My workouts were on and off. Did a session when I felt like it, or when I had the motivation to do so. Studied or did my university work when I could manage, or when I was not preoccupied with other things. That was the type of person I initially was. Someone who wanted to get a bunch of things done, but for some reason I just simply couldn't do them consistently. And when you don't do things consistently, then they never truly amount to something impressive. In order to truly be good at something, you have to be consistent at that thing. For example, if you want to be a good soccer player, a good basketball player, a martial artist, or a good software engineer, then you need to consistently be working on your craft. Or even if it's something like formation of a habit such as reading or going to the gym, in order to get the best possible return for these habits, you need to be doing them consistently. Reading a single page of a book isn't going to make you smarter, and a single session in the gym isn't going to make you stronger. Consistency is this underlying force that leads to good things. Let's analyze the reason why I was not very consistent in the past. And this is probably the reason why most people are not consistent either. The reason was that I was relying on pure motivation. Meaning if I had the desire to do an activity, I did it. And on days I did not have the motivation to do so, well, I simply skipped it. I had this mindset for years of using motivation as my primary tool to get things done. And this is why I could never really get consistent with anything. Because motivation is a limited resource and it will run out eventually. If you are going to rely on pure motivation or your mood in a given situation, then you're destined to fail. What you actually need are other systems and tools in place in order to stay consistent. Once you incorporate these systems and tools, you will no longer feel the need to rely on motivation. Today, I have been able to show consistency in multiple domains. I'm quite consistent with my cognitive work, meaning I study for roughly 3 to 4 hours a day and have been doing so for a couple of years at this point. I train every single day and no longer miss my sessions. Sometimes I even train twice a day. I have been able to stick to a diet and formulate an excellent sleep schedule. I've now slept and woken up at the same time for years, and my prayers are on point. So no matter what activity you are trying to get consistent at, the tools that I share with you in this video will greatly help you in your endeavor. Firstly, you need to understand this concept of activation energy. In order to start any task, there's some amount of activation energy required. This activation energy is small if you're quite familiar with the task or you find it easy. Think about it. There are things that you currently do that just seem automated. You don't really have to push yourself or think about them. Take brushing your teeth, for example. You've been brushing your teeth ever since you were a kid, or at least I hope so. Now as an adult, you don't even think about it. That behavior is just so automated at this point. The activation energy required to do so can easily be overcome. In contrast, tasks that you haven't done before or are not familiar with require a much higher activation energy to initiate. Perhaps you are someone who doesn't go to the gym. Therefore, the task of working out is this thing that requires an astronomical amount of activation energy and you just cannot do it. Based on this principle, the very first tool that we are going to use to reduce the activation energy required is called identity forming. Whenever you do a particular hobby or a task, you subconsciously cast a vote in favor of that identity. And once you accumulate enough of these votes, your brain gets the message, oh, I'm someone who does this activity. This is no biggie. I've done this a million times before. Once you have developed this identity, then the activation energy required to do that task is greatly lowered. And that task becomes almost automated. However, there is this initial period of casting votes that you need to go through. During this period, the new hobby or task that you wish to do is going to seem extremely challenging. You're simply not used to it. You simply don't have the identity to do it. What you should be doing during this period is to greatly lower the difficulty of that task. The entire purpose of doing the task during this phase should be to cast votes in favor of that identity. Let's take going to the gym for example. Instead of trying to work out for 1 hour at your very first session, You initially work out for just 20 minutes or even lower. Perhaps you literally just go and walk inside the gym, just to cast that vote and build that identity. With each new activity that I start, I almost always make it pretty fun and light during the initial stages, and just use that phase to build an identity. Once the activation energy is greatly reduced, then you can perhaps make the activity more challenging or add on more features to it or increase its duration. The second tool that greatly helps you reduce this activation energy is deciding when and where you are going to do this activity beforehand. For example, let's say you wish to study an hour a day. What you need to do is decide when that hour is going to take place and at what venue are you going to be studying. So you decided to study between, let's say, 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. and the location that you have chosen is your room. What this does now is that it skips the process of decision making tomorrow. To make decisions on the go requires energy. You need to pre-make these decisions beforehand such that you're just following a path and not creating a path. These days I have a routine that includes all the activities that I desire to do tomorrow. I visualize what tomorrow is going to look like. I mark the time and venue for each of the activities that I wish to do tomorrow. Now all I have to do the next day is just have a quick look at what I'm supposed to be doing. I no longer have to debate myself or analyze the pros and cons of my activities or be a victim of my whims. This greatly allows you to lower the activation energy of the task, and you're much more likely to do it. The last concept that I want you to understand is that the easier a particular task or behavior is to perform, the more likely you are to perform it. And the harder a particular task or behavior is to perform, the more likely you are to not perform it. Let's say you wish to train martial arts at 6 a.m. tomorrow. A way to ensure that this takes you minimal energy is by ensuring you have all your equipment ready and laid out prior to your scheduled class. I typically get all my stuff laid out a day prior, like my shin guards, my boxing gloves, my boxing bag, my water. I try to keep them all together in a bag pretty close by so I can just grab it and go. So this has greatly lowered the activation energy. I no longer have to think of the tasks that I need to perform in order to get to my gym. Also, if I intend to study tomorrow, let's say at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., whatever be the time, I typically keep my notes ready a day prior. I decide what I'm going to study tomorrow. This really allows me to just get on the task when that time arrives. Similarly, if you wish to end a particular habit, make sure that habit is difficult to perform. Let's say you are someone who wishes to stop eating junk food or snacks at night. Keep your fridge free from such items. Make it rather difficult to acquire junk food. Put this barrier of great activation energy between yourself and the undesirable activity. The larger the barrier, the more likely you are to not do it. These are the tools and systems that allowed me to pick up a bunch of good habits and turn me into someone who could now reap the rewards of doing something consistently. If you're interested in further exploring these topics, I will highly recommend reading this book called Atomic Habits. This book completely transformed my life, and I would be willing to bet it would significantly improve yours too. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like, and if you're interested in more content that revolves around self-improvement, then do subscribe to my channel. Thank you.